Hello YouTube, Matt here from Vectis 3D Models, here with a new video with instructions on the air smoothed schools. Now this model did get quite a lot of attention when I posted a photo of it on eBay, and I thought, well, maybe now is the time to produce this in resin, as I originally built one from scratch in sheet brass and shaped and moulded it to how it needed to be. With 3D printing I can now do that in the right size, and also I can do all the variations that I had always wanted to do. So to be square with you, I have three versions. This is version 1, which is in front of us now, which was the original sort of plywood casing which was applied to number 935 schools in December 1938, just as a photo exercise or a mock-up of the proposed streamlining of the school's class. So this was the original mock-up, which was decorated in malachite with some yellow lining along the sides, as well as along the front as well. There's also a second version which is slightly more refined, the smoke deflectors removed, the casing down the side slightly rounded over and going into a nice point alongside the buffer pods, as it were. The buffer pods were also moved outwards so it would deflect the air around the front of the smoke box front, and also the cab as well as the tender front had been swooped backwards, just to give it that look of movement, I suppose. So I've done those two versions as well as a bit of a mashup of both versions together, so one with the smoke deflectors and the rearranged casing along the sides, as well as the swept-backed tender and cab. So it's a bit of a mix and match. So I've got all three versions ready to print and ready to order. So these will be available on Made Me for around about £70 odd, maybe a little bit more. The reason for this price is due to the actual number of components and also the size. So you have a tender body shell and the locomotive body shell, as well as all the interior components like back head, some buffers, safety valves and whistle, as well as a handbrake. Having to make all these bits obviously takes time and costs some money to do as well. So join me in the next part of this video where we'll go through what you need and where we will be putting this together slowly, bit by bit, but it's quite simple to do, I promise. So to start this body shell kit we need a chassis. So the chassis you require is a newer tooled Hornby Schools class. We have a BR black version in front of me right here. This was purchased off eBay. Damaged, body shell damaged, as you can see, bits missing, falling off, etc. But the chassis, the locomotive drive end and tender was all working, apart from of course slightly damaged tender plug, which is quite easy to repair. I picked this up for a grand total of around about £37, and you can still get them for that amount. I have been asked as well, will you be doing a tender drive body shell? The answer is possibly in the future. It always depends on how well this goes and sells. I will then consider, is there another option or an avenue I can go down with the tender drive one. So it's a possibility with maybe a few less variations. Instead of 1, 2 and 3, it might be just 1 or 2. So you can pick these up for quite a reasonable sum, which is positive. So this is the DCC ready version with the 8-pin DCC socket in the tender. Of course, what we have to do next is check it works, make sure it's healthy, make sure it runs alright, and then we'll strip down the body shell, take the body shell off, we won't need any parts from it, and also just take the tender top body off, just leaving the running plate, and that's all you require. So this is the Hornby chassis of the schools. As you can see, it's a modern day one with one of those rather annoying white plugs. This is an 8-pin DCC plug on the socket on the tender end, and that connects through to a locomotive drive. So this is the chassis you require. Don't necessarily need the body shell unless you're going to steal a few bits off of it, but that is basically what you need for your build. Make sure it runs well, make sure it's serviceable. I need to replace the plug, but apart from that, it's good to go. So let's start our build. So cleaning the model, I will just need a needle file really for the front end. The supports are mainly along the bottom edge or edges, and also the back side here you can just about see on the back of the roof here as well. The windows will need a little bit of a clean. There's a little bit of debris just there where my thumb is, a little bit on the underside of the steps, and very careful cleaning around the pipework. You can see a little bit more on the inside edge just here, on the edge here. This is sort of built upwards from the build plate. So most of the top surfaces, if not all of them, should be clear of any support material. If I have missed any, it'd be usually around the chimney or the back of the lamp iron. So I'm just going to do that next, and then move on to the tender. So underside of the body shell has now been filed, all the edges, all the sides, and also around the bogie as well. So that's the back edge of the front of the buffer beam as well. I've done the back as well, you can see all cleaned up, as well as the sides of the cab as well. So nice and clean. I've also sanded down the sides. There's a slight step, as you can see on that side, which I might have to add a bit of filler to, but it's not too bad. Once I'm sure some primer goes on, it shouldn't be too bad. So what I'm going to do next is move on to the tender. So on the tender body shell, we'll be doing similar actions, including some filing and some wet and dry sanding on the side. You can see the various support structures which used to be on the side of here. They need to be wet and dry sanded down, or just taken off with a flat file, then wet and dry sanded. There's not too much support stuff around the ends here, a little bit on the roof side. There are some small ones around this side, but they should have been removed during cleaning. On the rear we have a little bit on the edges here, and also on this side to keep this stable in the print, and also same on this side, this edge here. On the underside it's really along the edges here and here, which you'll just need to flat file. And on the rear here there is a little bit of support material which you can go over again with your flat file, or I generally try to use sort of a fiberglass brush cleaner, which can just about get rid of it. You may want to try it again still with your flat file, just to aid the cleaning, and that should clean up quite nicely. Inside the coal space here, I just got a bit of debris from the little supports which were around. Again, that will just need some cleaning off. Sometimes I need or use a Dremel just to clean off the little spaces here, but there's not too much debris around to clean up. So I'm going to go into that now and just go around the body shell and clean it up. So I have basically gone round this model and cleaned it up as best as I can, and I've also coated it in some grey primer just to protect it while I'm working on it, as well as just sort of prepping it for painting later on, and also this just protects any UV light damage to the resin. So next stage really we're going on to is detailing, so adding some bits and pieces to make this model nice and detailed. So on here you can see holes either side on the inside edge for handrails, so you'll need some 0.45mm wire, brass wire, nickel, silver, doesn't matter. We also have a hole in the sort of top of the running plate for the tender for the handbrake, which is supplied in your kit just here. Again, this is unprimed, so I'll probably need to prime it and paint it separately before fitting. And then really it's just test fitting it on the chassis, which I'm going to do just before I start detailing, just to make sure it all fits okay. Overall it's a good fit, and if we just turn it over a little bit you won't be able to see on the footage, but we have good alignment to the fixing positions on the underside of the tender, which is great, excellent. So now we can move forward with the next part. So looking from behind the model into the cab, you can see there's a big hole where there would be a cab interior. And on the left we have a 3D printed boiler back head, something I've never done before, as it's quite off-putting of the amount of detail that's there. However, I've used some new technology, which of course is the buzzword at the moment, AI, and I have filtered in some photographs of a boiler back head from the schools, and it's done not too bad of a job, but I've had to go back and redraw a few areas, like the reverser and the regulator handle and a few other areas as well. So this is 3D printed in a black resin, just to give you a better base colour. It is extremely fragile, so please be careful. You can spray it in any sort of plastic based paint. I generally use Halfords anyway, and there's a small amount of work that needs to be done. Please check it over if it's broken or anything's damaged. What you'll need to do is basically clean it up on the underside. Now it's held in place on the underside and printed upwards, and this will need filing down flat with a flat file, and hopefully with that done I can then slide it into the hole into the back, so that should be quite entertaining. And if there are any little bits and pieces I've left from support removal, I can see a little bit on this one already underneath the firebox hole door, and a little bit around the side of the reverser. Just do be very careful and use a very sharp knife and a pair of tweezers. So let's crack on and get that installed. So I've filed down the underside as much as I possibly can, and I've just taken a little bit off the edge just here, and also just on here as well, because the primer was making it a little bit tight. So just going to try and slot it in, avoiding all the small details as much as I possibly can. It's very tight, as you can see. There's not much light here, but we'll try our best. That's all the way in. Yeah, that's pretty much up against the back there, so that's all in. It's tight, but it fits. That's the main thing. I'd rather be slightly oversized than undersized, so it ensures a nice tight fit in there. So happy with that. Very tight tolerances, but it's in. So onto the top of the boiler, or just in front of the cab. So you can see two openings here, one for the whistle and two holes and an opening for the safety valves. Now unfortunately Markets is not around at the moment due to the death of its owner, which is a big shame and a big loss to the kit and hobby market. So I have decided, which is why this kit is a bit later than normal, I've decided to 3D print some of the bits I require. So we have some safety valves here and a whistle. So these will come as pictured on a sprue, and you can see there's a small circular piece of material which goes into a hole into the whistle housing. So these will need painting, probably prior to fitting. However, I'm just going to leave them plain in its resin black. So the holes may need re-drilling because the resin moves and shrinks as it gets cured, so please bear that in mind, and I will put up the drill sizes if required on the screen as I'm doing that section. So just going to attach the whistle, bit of varnish on the underside, and I've opened up the hole to 1mm. It's a very tight fit, so before starting on the safety valves, I just want to summarise a small point on the whistle. So obviously we're working on version B of the body shell, so that's the one with no smoke deflectors and the curvature on the side, as well as the slanted back cab as well. On version A, the cab is more upright, and that means the top here gets a bit smaller as it rotates over and becomes straighter. So that means you'll have to modify the whistle slightly. So this is the which end are we looking at? This is the whistle end, and this end here with the small pin which goes into the hole will need to be trimmed back a little bit just to facilitate the movement of the cab going forward. So you will need to trim the end here to allow it to fit. So that's just a small variation note. Moving on to the safety valves, you can see I've already actually fitted one here, so you will need to do a little bit of work. You will need a 2.5mm drill to just drill out a little bit the holes for the safety valves. You can see there I made it slightly oversized to drop the safety valves into the hole. These are the safety valves which you've seen before, and these will need trimming off very slightly underneath the main safety valve, which I'll do now. They need to sit quite low in the cavity. There's not much room when you insert them because the motor is literally sitting just underneath the surface. Now I'm going to stick these into place with just a tiny bit of super glue when I get round to it. Let's see how that looks in general. You can see the height is about the same when it stands up. There we go. So they'll be stuck into place with a little bit of super glue, just so it's nice and happy in there. So you just need a 2 and a bit millimeter drill bit. Drill the hole out where there's a small hole where they locate, and just pop the safety valve into that hole and glue it into place. Nice and simple. And again, if this model was painted, I would advise painting these small parts on the sprue already. Moving to the front end, which is our final destination on this kit build, we are moving to the buffer housings on the front of the model. Now the holes in the actual buffer beam, or the buffer housing as it were, do need to be enlarged slightly. They are very, very tight. So a small Dremel or a very small drill bit, again 2.5 mil, around about that size, just to ease the hole, making it slightly bigger. I would advise using a Dremel or a very small bit, which just takes away the material lightly rather than a lot. You don't need to take a lot, just a little. So I've got the buffers here. You'll get 2 of these in your kit, and they come with a sort of guide on the end. They're not designed to be sprung, but they're just designed to be a guide. I'll be varnishing these in just in case they get damaged. I can replace them. And I've already cleaned out the hole in the buffer housing. There's a small hole in the back which I've again re-drilled, and these will just gently push in, making sure they're both about the same in terms of length, and that'll be absolutely fine. Again, if you're not a fan of the brackets for the root discs or lamp irons, then you can remove those as well if you wish. That's entirely up to you. So that brings us to the end of this body shell instruction video, and hopefully you have found it useful in the build of your kit. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them below in the comments section, or you can comment or message me through Instagram or Facebook. If you also have more detailed queries, please find my email address at Vectis3D models, all one word, at btinternet.com. If you have purchased one of these kits, many thanks for supporting my very small business. Every small order helps, and every big order goes a long way to making new items and more interesting things for you to purchase and add to your layout. Thanks again for watching, and any questions or queries, as I say, drop them below or email them to me and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. You can purchase this model through MadeMe and hopefully on eBay in the future.